On this episode of AV Week, QSC halts shipments and the corporate side of House of Worship. All this and more on this episode of AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week episode 523, a gooder service, aka Let's Get Cookin'.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Sennheiser. For over 75 years, Sennheiser has been a leader in pro audio and is now offering a wide variety of touchless and traditional audio solutions for both corporate and educational campus-wide audio.
And by FSR.
Welcome to this episode of AV Week. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv. We're filling in for Mr. Albright this week. We have with us this week, it's going to be a fantastic show. First, we have my sister, Megan Dutta. She is the new Director of Emerging Markets at Rave Agency. How you doing, Meg?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Then we have my twin, Mr. Luke Jordan. He is the VP and co-steward at Electroacoustics. How you doing, Luke?
Good. Had nothing else to do, so I'm glad to be here.
You really should find ways to fill your day, Luke. Like, you're a VP. You can't just hang
I'm getting
out and do
a little
podcasts.
mini golf course for my office.
That sounds amazing. I might steal that idea. And last but not least, we have Mr. John Henkel. He is the Pro AV Product Marketing Manager at Netgear. How you doing, John?
Well, thanks. Luke and I were talking together what we could do for Friday for entertainment, and here we are.
Yeah, look at that. I'm glad you guys could join me. It's going to be a fun show. We are going to kick it off with a story that comes to us from ravepubs.com. QSC is going to temporarily stop fulfilling orders for a number of products due to supply shortages in a maybe not an internal letter, but a letter that went out to premier dealers. QSC mentions that due to supply shortages, shipping issues, etc., there is a fairly decent product portfolio that they are going to stop accepting orders on those products for the foreseeable future until they can supply those in a efficient manner, we'll say. This is the first of its kind, to my knowledge, of a vendor coming right out and saying, hey, we have a bunch of mainstay products that we can't fulfill in a timely manner, so we're not even going to take back orders on them. Megan, this must have been a tough decision to make for QSC to articulate this and put it on paper, opposed to just having a rep say, yeah, you don't want to order that one for a while. What does it mean to see a big company like QSC kind of have this, semi-honest note out to its dealer base? And I say semi-honest in the sense that they didn't post this on the website. This just went out to dealers, and in the bottom it says, please do not send this out. This is confidential, which it no longer is. So sorry about that. I didn't get it. It didn't come from me. I'm not the source. What does it mean, Megan, to see a company be this honest with their dealer base about the issues that they're facing as far as supplying product?
I'm a big fan of transparency, and this is kind of like the ultimate transparency, just saying like, hey, you're not going to get these. So, you're essentially not wasting people's time. They're not speccing them. They're not trying to order them and then waiting for updates on it. And I think it is going to lead to a greater trend. They're the first to do it. It's like you said, to our knowledge, they're the first to do it. And I think it's going to make other manufacturers feel more comfortable saying, you know what, we're also having the same problem, because it's not a secret that the entire world is facing a supply chain shortage. I mean, I just ordered new windows in March. They're getting here this week. That's not normal, and everybody's facing that, and no matter what industry that you're in. So I think it's they get big props for claiming it and owning it.
Very good. Luke, when you see this as an integrator, as a dealer, does this endear QSC to you? Do you take that honesty and say, yes, this is fantastic, even though we can't sell those products and we've got to find a replacement? When they have them, we're definitely coming full board with that. Does it make you want to see that honesty from your other vendors?
It's a mixed bag for me. I definitely agree that transparency and, hey, this is what's coming is really nice. There's a mixing console that I ordered in April, and they've quit responding to when I'm going to get it. And so we're having to just use existing gear and not have as many channels and come up with a workaround for our client. So, yeah, knowing that that's coming and there's just no time horizon, but they are being proactive about communicating that, that's great. On the other hand, maybe unlike some consultants that is what I chose for this reason and it has to be that and it's worth the wait, I serve the client and I serve their timetable. And so it's less about, I'm going to use this product and this is nice to have so I can quit specifying that. I still have a bunch of jobs and a bunch of clients in a lurch, and this doesn't help me solve that problem, which is my biggest problem, is taking care of my clients and just being good stewards of their facilities and their systems. So
does it give you, though, like the part that I really relate with, and full disclosure, if you don't know, I'm an integrator too, so I get this. Do you not, or can you not appreciate the fact that they're saying, hey, don't put this into your spec because we don't have it for the foreseeable future? So yes, you're still scrambling, but you're not sitting there for 3 months and then 6 months and then maybe 9 months down the road going, we're still waiting on that thing because my rep keeps telling me it's a month out. I'm sure it's on the water, right? Is that not helpful?
So the hard line to take here is I appreciate the transparency, but I appreciate inventory even more. And so I think this leaves the door open for any other competitor to say either, hey, we weren't as popular, so we didn't have the demand, but we saw the writing on the wall. We increased production capacity. We hired staff. We started working more hours, and we can take all of those amplifiers that you need, all those touch panels you need, all these accessories you need, and we can produce a competitive product and have it in stock, and we have got 6 months of inventory in the States ready to go. Come find us. I think this is a big opportunity for someone to try and catch up market share and create waves. I appreciate inventory more than a proactive, here's what's coming. But I also believe in grace. So I really do appreciate what's going on, and I'm willing to hold out on a great relationship with a manufacturer like QNC because they're doing this. But it'd be helpful if they gave me some type of idea of how long I needed to hold on for before I start swapping products over.
But Luke, what makes you think that other manufacturers just have all these spare parts when there's a global shortage of supplies? I mean, that's the whole reason it's not like...
Because I'm still installing?
No, I get it. But I mean, I've worked for a manufacturer, and John, you can feel free to jump in here, but it's not like everyone is just like, oh yeah, we have these spare parts around, but QSC is the only company that's having this issue.
Yeah, it's tough. I can certainly jump in. Being the only manufacturer here, or currently, I should say, making you work for one, it's tough. This is a huge problem worldwide for not just this industry, as you're saying. So I worked for several manufacturers before, and Netgear being a public company and is massive, this is the biggest company I've worked for, and it affects the entire company. It affects what products we choose to make a year from now or 2 years from now. But for current supply and things, I admire their transparency for sure. I think that helps in general, but like Luke said, product on the shelf would help even more. At Netgear, we've done such a good job, I think, overall of marketing to the Pro AV community for our switches, and now we're having supply issues, and it happens. Unfortunately, trying to get out of that is not as easy, and our operations team is working amazing feats trying to get these products in. We're flying products in versus putting them on a ship sometimes if we have to. We're, as you all have heard of or read about some of these deals, we're making headway with like QSC for exclusive partnership for some of our switches or so and so. So we have to make sure we allot some of them to them while making sure that people like Luke and Matt have product as well to install. So it's a huge balancing act that is just, we talk about this daily at Netgear. It is difficult to get out of. And like Megan, like you're saying, it isn't like just, oh, we'll just use a different chip, because that whole board is designed around this one chip. And it comes from the chip manufacturers down to the ODMs. Oh, COVID breaks out at a factory, and now you can't produce that product. I mean, it's endless. So it's a really sticky thing. It's a really difficult problem. I get.
And to that point, we started doing Netgear as our primary go-to switch within the last year. But you can only do so many different lines that do the same thing. You really can't carry every line at a competitive price and know the nuances and kind of design intentions of every brand. So you kind of have to pick a limited number of switches, amplifiers, speakers, whatever, and you've kind of got to roll the dice with those, and maybe you do one off for a bid, but you probably don't have the best pricing. So I get calls constantly because of my role within my business of, hey, we are such and such company, we do this, we think you'd be a good fit, we would love to work with you. And the answer I usually give is, thanks, I appreciate that, I know who you are, I like what you do, but I am in a good place with this company, and they're going to have to give me a good opportunity to go looking before I'm actually going to go do that. And I have switched several vendors in the last few years because of that. It's been a volatile couple years, it feels like. But so where I was getting my switches was transactional. I've had more of a relationship with Netgear. So I'll pick on them because you're on the call, John, and that's been great. But situations like these is where companies gain and lose market share. Mm-hmm. And this global supply chain has not been a new issue at all. And so some companies, I think, have been able to forecast or deal with that. And again, I mean, I understand there's grace. QSC is just a very, very big fish. And so there is a lot of demand, and they do a great job marketing it, and they do a fantastic job innovating it. I've got a great relationship. If Corey Schaefer, if you're listening, I love you guys. So I'm not bashing QSC at all. However, there is just this friction of, I appreciate the relationship, however, I don't have product. So it's tough all around. It's been tough for a while.
Matt, one more thing in the article before we wrap up.
What would you like to talk about?
I want to talk about the 5% surcharge.
That doesn't shock me at all.
I know, but I want to know how many manufacturers are doing that and semi-publicizing
publicly?
it.
I'll speak to that for a second. The majority of our companies, we're seeing increasing shipping. Everybody's increasing shipping because I was talking to a vendor last week who told me they typically buy a container for $3,000 to ship things over from China, and now they are paying $22,000 to $25,000 for a container. So there comes a point, and there's a lot of reasons for that, as far as why there's a shortage, and I'm sure there's some price gouging and some other things going on as well, but it is what it is. Shipping is going up extensively, and I think you're going to see that, Luke. I'm assuming you're seeing the same.
I actually don't know what shipping costs. Every now and then I'll do a couple box sales for TVs, and I'll be told you are way off, either above or below. I actually just calculate shipping as a percentage of overall cost on a project, which is what QSC is doing here. Mm-hmm. But for me, I'm seeing random and rapid increases, even just on cost in general. Yep. Some of them, I guess this transparency is very nice. I've got Allen and Heath is doing an increase September 1st, so I am getting in tons and tons and tons of orders before now. I am breaking off parts of quotes because they don't have all the money, but they know they don't want to pay more. I'm breaking off, splitting up quotes to make sure that we get in under the deadline. So giving me here's a 2 weeks heads up, that's great. Other times I read emails that say, by reading this email, you have now been informed that there has been a price increase.
Those are my favorite.
So I think transparency is great. And I really am not super mad about shipping. It is what it is. I want them to make money and stay in business too.
Yeah, it's the cost of doing business. All right, let's change topics because I could rant on shipping and things like that. Living in Canada for quite a while. This comes to us from Sound and Communications, the intersection of corporate and ministry. if you have not read this article, go check this out. It is a very, very good article from David Lee Jr., essentially talking about the fact that there's a huge corporate aspect of House of Worship that gets missed a lot. When we talk House of Worship, and I talk House of Worship a lot, I just wrote an article for Megan's former company last week that I think just came out like today or yesterday.
Correct. It's in the September issue.
Yes, it's in the September issue.
September issue of SCN. Go check it out. AVNetwork.com.
Definitely go check it out. So I feel that I'm uniquely able to talk House of Worship, and I'm glad Luke is here because I know he does a lot of House of Worship as well. But essentially, when we talk House of Worship as a rule, we're talking the auditorium. We're talking audio, we're talking video, we're talking lighting, we're talking staging, maybe some atmospheric stuff if you're, wild and crazy. We don't talk the back office. We don't talk the requirements for data management, for media, for digital conferencing, for all the things that we talk in a corporate environment. Luke, when you see this article, and again, I know you and your company do a fair amount of House of Worship as well, is this kind of the biggest overlooked aspect of that vertical?
No. House of Worship is a very strange vertical in a lot of ways. I think you go into the corporate there's just so many differences between denominations, between geographical location, between what their mission as a church is within their denomination from another church within their denomination's mission. I think you go into most corporate environments, their goal is to provide a good or service at a good price and make money. And every dollar they spend internally ideally would support that. And if something is expensive but provides good value, then it's worth the money. If it's expensive but it's really not going to give us a lot of benefit in our ability to make a good thing at a good price and make profit, then it's not really good for us, and that's okay. So that's a very stable vertical from my perspective. But the Catholic Church has very different systems and processes and missions from the Southern Baptist Church. And the average size and needs of a church south of the Mason-Dixon line are going to be much different than anything in the north. Yes, we use that word in daily conversation down here. It's a geographical line. Thank you, Mr. Schofield, 6th grade geography. So I think that you have larger churches that understand this well. I think you have growing churches that are on their way there and need a consultant or a design build firm like ours to guide them, to give them insights, to help prepare infrastructure on where they're going. And then you have a lot of small to medium-sized churches that what happens in the sanctuary is the mission, and there's really not a need for the back office support to really be a part of that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. John, one of the things that kind of hit me, again, reading the article, knowing you were coming on, was I know when we've worked with a variety of churches, we get tasked with managing, again, the auditorium, the breakout rooms, and the networks for those rooms. And often it's split up, and we're running a separate network for AVL, and then we're running one for attendees or parishioners or whatever you want to call them, congregants, depending on your faith. But we're very rarely in that back office. And a lot of times you end up with multiple, 3 different network schematics for that facility. What's the best way, or is there a best way, to Luke's point, to try and address all 3 of those together? Or does it make sense a lot of times for integrators just to not touch that back office at all?
Great questions, Matt. I think it's the same as we talk about for Pro AV. We talk about convergence of AV and IT together, but in general, you don't want to do that. We don't want to have these video streams flooding down the regular corporate network. Same thing for House of Worship, I'd say. And especially if they're happy with their back office network, great, keep that there. Maybe add some control that can bridge that network, but otherwise keep the AV network separate. And I think house of worship is really unique, and you get all kinds of people who are initiating the push for AV, right? Luke's seen this, of course. You get the guy who's just a volunteer who maybe has no AV background at all, but he's gung-ho, and I think it's awesome, and they're learning all this stuff. They don't know what they're getting into. And you get people who are actually into business who are helping out the church too. So you're going to get a mixed bag of all these people trying to implement all these different things, and they don't know what to do. So it's really important for the design firms to help figure out what's appropriate, and then, plug and Netgear a little bit products that make it easier to implement with just like a click and, touch sort of interface. Things like that, I think, can really make a big difference in house of worship.
Yeah, that's really good. Megan, let's wrap this one up with you, I think. Why is it so difficult to capitalize on the house of worship market? Because it's, especially in the U.S. and especially to Luke's point, south of the Mason-Dixon, it is a massive industry. Up here in Canada, not so much. It's still big. It's just we don't have y'all mega churches that y'all have down south. Why is it so hard for our industry to capitalize on just that market in general?
I don't know. It's the truth.
See, don't you love the transparency?
I do.
Well, and like Luke already said, it's not like corporations where everyone kind of has like a very similar thing. It's different. It varies by region. It varies by faith. There's so many variables, and you have to really know, I think, your local market. And so maybe, smaller integrators like you and Luke do better in that market than larger ones.
I'm going to challenge the question. How are we not capitalizing on it?
You've been in a lot of churches, Luke. You've seen how poor a lot of those facilities are. There's tons of facilities today that don't have a good relationship with an integrator. If you are, and again, this one is a little near and dear to my heart, which is why I'm kind of harping on it. If you're a member of any of the technical forums on Facebook for churches, it is a cluster of nonsense, which leads me to say that we do not capitalize on that market. Am I wrong in that?
Oh, I used to sell Cutco knives in college because that's what you do in college. And it was actually a very good sales strategy.
Never knew.
Who else did that?
I worked in TV in college. Sorry.
Yeah, I worked in like Campus Aid.
No, I want to know. People need to reach out to me this week. If you sold Cutco knives in college, come find me.
We need to put a poll
but
up.
it was a fantastic job. I would go home to Fort Worth from the weekends during college and just sell knives. It was great. So you just book appointments with folks that are kind of home during the day. You drink sweet tea and lemonade, and you cut up fruit, and you make money. It's fantastic. So I would show up with like cantaloupes, watermelons. You would take the shears, and you would corkscrew a penny, all kinds of fun stuff. But so you say, this is what I can do with my knives. Go get your best kitchen knife, and let's see if it'll do the same thing. And it wouldn't. So you really just prove the value of the product, and then you say, here's what competitive products cost. This costs less, but we know it's good because we've seen it, we've played with it, we've cut stuff. Let's get cooking. And so in the same way, at the end of the day, that knife buying client really gets to decide, what is my value? Am I fine with my Costco kitchen knife that, yeah, I've seen your knife and my knife. I know yours is better, but I really don't cook that much. Or, it's just really not a big deal to me. I'm okay if some of my tomatoes get squashed and are unusable and I throw them away. My produce budget isn't that big. They get to decide, having seen a good knife, I still don't really care. Or I would like that. Of course I would like that. I don't think any church wouldn't like to have AV that doesn't fall apart and is held together by duct tape. But it's just not in our budget. Or we've got a ton of debt as a church and our congregation is shrinking. We really, while it would be nice to be able to communicate more effectively with people, which would enhance the worship experience that may bring people, we're already in debt, and we are gambling when we say that. And so we have to be good stewards of the money we have and really focus on paying down debt as a body before we can take on more. And so it's not as simple as The reason that their AV is bad is because integrators and consultants haven't tried to educate them and provide them with better tools. But again, they don't have as linear of a revenue generating source as a for-profit business does.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just go out and sell more and make that problem go away. They have to fundraise, they have to ask, they are dependent on an alternative form of revenue from the for-profit sector. And so I don't think that it's a lack of education or who to talk to. And I honestly, at least down here, I think we do a fantastic job. I think the really big national firms do a good job too. There's differences on why a church may or may not use which of us. But to me, there's only a few fly-by-night guys that really give everyone a bad name. But to me, it's other priority-driven decisions from a church in that church market that's different from even traditional nonprofits, 501c3s, or the private sector that are really making that difference.
Do you think that it has anything to do with, a lot of churches, their AV staff is made up of volunteers, and those volunteers might not even have AV experience? Like, how many people that are in AV now do you know that got their start? Like Alicia will say she was like 12 doing like audio at her church, and she just learned it herself.
No, I was 14. I mean, a lot of us got started by starting off with youth groups, and if you didn't have a mix wizard, then I don't know what you're doing. But it's just different.
I think, Megan, to your point, the volunteer aspect can be very challenging, and our sweet spot has always been these smaller local churches. And that is the number one issue that we run across: budget and staff. And when you have a lot of facilities that do not pay or hire competent people to run that system every week, and there's a lot of very good volunteers, don't misunderstand, but you're at the mercy of, quite often, a volunteer who's kind of trying to direct the implementation of tech in their facility, or a board, which has its own challenges that I'm sure Luke's dealt with before too. That's a lot of times you're in a situation where either a integrator or a consultant brings something to the table, shows the ministry a plan, and then it gets dissected by people who don't really know what they're doing, which in the corporate world, that doesn't happen that much. It's and definitely not to the same level. So you end up with a lot of situations where you fulfill something, and I would assume, Luke, you've been down this road too. You design a system, and all of a sudden, somebody in the facility is trying to buy comparable equipment off eBay or Craigslist or whatever, and they're going to rig it themselves.
Yeah, This isn't true for marriage, but it sure works out for AV. Sometimes you've got to let your wife date other people to figure out that you're still a good catch. Yeah. Mrs. Jordan, I love you. Excited to celebrate 10 years in 2 months. And so, if they decide to,
link, by the way,
if they decide to shop it out and go all that, you're also not obligated at that point to install what is left or anything like that. And if it goes well, then you've already lost that relationship, and it's probably not the best relationship. A good relationship, you provide something fantastic and you also make a profit. Those are two things that have to happen on every good project. So if you are no longer making margin, or if they're not happy, then you either need to do something to try and reestablish that relationship, or it's time to say, that's all right. I don't have to be everybody's integrator. That's okay. And oftentimes they might come back and say after a while, wow, this is actually really hard. We don't want to do it ourselves anymore. Or they might say, that other integrator had a much better price, but they don't do X, Y, and Z, and we really kind of realize how much that was a big part of what you did. can you come help us again? I've been down that road many times with different industries.
You and me both.
You might say they need to have faith in you. Wow. As an integrator.
That's great.
I'm not going to tell a church to have faith in anyone but the man upstairs.
I've actually used that one myself. So you usually get a chuckle. When you don't get the chuckle, that's when it's like, yep, this ain't gonna work.
You got to read the room.
Yeah, read the room. Read the room. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's end it there before I really go on a rant about it. Megan, my friend, if people want to connect with you, learn more about Rave Agency, where can they do that?
You can find me on Twitter at Megan A. Dutta. You can find things about Launch, which is the platform I work on at Rave, at launch.com, which is LAVNCH.com.
Excellent. Thank you, my friend. Mr. Jordan, if people want to connect with you, learn more about electroacoustics, where can they do that?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Luke Jordan EAVI, or you can find us at our website, eavi.com, spelled exactly how it sounds.
If you follow him on Twitter, he'll tell you where you can get a nice cardigan like that too. Mr. Henkel, thank you so much for joining us. If people want to connect with you, learn more about Netgear, where can they do that?
You can find me on Twitter, of course, as well, John R. Henkel, middle initial R. And certainly netgear.com/proav is a good landing page to find out, and LinkedIn as well.
Excellent.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you all for joining us. As for myself, if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Twitter at Matt D. Scott and pretty much every other social platform. But more importantly, please stop by AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of AV Week. It's like I have my sister and my little brother. And then, John, you can be the cool uncle.
Oh,
I thought we were twins.
Yeah, sort of.